G'day everyone, the Start here. Today we're going to be doing a tutorial on multi-level building of structures. So the first thing we need to understand is the heights that we're going to be working with. So first off, as you can see here, I've built all the structures that you're probably going to be looking at, just so we have an example. I base my mental math as such on the two pillars system, because everything needs at least two pillars roughly of height. Okay, and then we have what I call, or what most people call, is the offset. So if we look at the fabricator and the smelter, they have an offset of 3 units based on a two pillar height. Now each pillar is 6 units, so 2 pillars is 12 units. An offset of 3 units means that the height is 9 units. Okay, so these are both 9 units. Most of the structures that you're building are going to be 9 units. The only differences are the furnace and the compounder. Alright, so the furnace has an offset of 1, which means it has a height of 11 units, making it the second tallest. And I generally like to build my levels based on the furnace because it keeps all, if you're doing a fairly long base, we have some guess. If you're doing a fairly long base and want to keep everything on the same level, this is probably the best to work with. Okay, then we have the mega press, which is also an offset of 3, and the assembler, which is also an offset of 3. So again, they're both 9. Okay, which makes them essentially have the same height as the smelter and the fabricator. And then we have the compounder, which is a full 12 units. Which makes it the most difficult to build a full 3 levels with. I generally like to have 2 levels of assembler and then my compounder on top. And because of the width being 6 units wide and the assembler being 3 units wide, I essentially get 4 assemblers. 4 assemblers. Bit of a distraction going on over there. And then 1 compounder on top. And that's generally a fairly decent mix. Unless you're really trying to min-max things, it works well. You can build 3 stories or 3 levels for compounders, but it's very situational because you need to make sure that the compounder is on the ground level, the first one, and that you can actually build the full pillar system on the ground level, so you can get the full height. Otherwise it's not going to work, which makes it quite situational because it's very rare to find purely flat land. In this area you can do it. There is quite a lot of flat land, but yeah, it is situational, so we're not going to look at it too much today. Alright, so we've got our heights, and like I said, I like to base my building on the furnace, because it gives me, it's its tallest one, and usually you have your furnaces on multiple levels, unlike the compounder, so it allows me to keep all my floors, if I want to, at the same height. Okay, so first thing we need to do, furnaces. Now I like to put down the furnaces first, just so I have a general understanding. We're going to do it this way. So I have a general understanding of my heights I'm working with, and okay, let's just put down 2. Now the Z key, it locks it in place so you keep it at the same height. Okay, and depending on how many you're building, you can just keep going backwards or keep going and so forth. Now you want a pillar in between. Now see how this is not stable, which means it's 2, I need to go up 1. So it's a good thing I checked that first. So if I want to keep all this on the same levels, I'm going to need to adjust this here to match. So let's get rid of this. Now, since this is just an example, I'm not going to do more than these 6, just so we have something to work with. Probably don't even need that, but I'll keep the 6 there anyway. Now I like to actually sync my furnaces. So this will be the normal height you would build, but I like to sink them. So this will be my ground height. Now the reason I do that is because of the pillar system. If I want to place pillars, I'm going to need to have an offset height of the pillars of 4 units high. And I'll explain that in a second, what I mean by that. Just let me get this first one done at least. Just so we have that done. Okay, so our offset in total is 4. Yeah, so what we want to do is make our main support pillars, because our furnace is sunk by 1. We need to make our main support pillars a height of 3 offset. So let's go get rid of these quickly. This is where our support pillars are going to go. So we want an offset of 3. 1, 2, 3. Just make sure that that's locked in. Nothing worse than doing all your main support pillars and finding out you've missed offset by 1 or something. Have to redo them again. Okay. Now obviously we can go up 1 more, but for now, just to keep it visually working, it's simpler. We're going to leave it there for now. Now we need, actually, show you. Now the height of this, is too low. So we actually need to go up 1 more for the next floor. And for that, what we do is, for that, what we need to do is delete that and put the pillar back. We need to build a scaffolding pillar. So let's get rid of this one. Doesn't matter which one. Doesn't matter where you put it. Either one will do. And we need to go up by 1 on our scaffolding pillar. So 1 more. And we place. And that gives us our scaffolding pillar. Okay. Now as you can see, when you place it, it attaches it to the main supporting pillars. Okay. And what you want to make sure you do here is actually individually put these first pillars down. Now that ensures that this platform here is attached to the pillar, because if you drag and drop, it will not necessarily attach properly. Let me show you. Get rid of this. Okay, so you put your support pillar in. Right, and then I do from here, drag and drop. And that one down. Now, if we look, see how if I delete this one, it's going to delete that, because it's not actually attaching to the pillar properly. Right? So when you're working around these pillars, take the time and do 1 at a time, to get the actual attachment to the pillar. Now if I delete this, you don't necessarily have to delete everything if you're doing large sections. You just need the one that's attached to the pillar. Now, if I check again, it's now attached to that pillar, as well as to this platform here. So if I delete the pillar, it's going to stay. If I delete that platform, it's going to stay, because they have a supporting. This is where the drag and drop you've got to be careful with. But once you have that, okay, we can now drag and drop to the end. Obviously we can't go all the way, so we just go to the one before and then singly place, and then I can fill the gap with the drag and drop. Again, individually singly place these just to make sure they're attached to the pillar as well as the blocks, the platforms next to them, to give that extra support. Alright, so that done, I can now place the next furnace. Alright, and then we put the rest of the pillars up. is our top floor. And I can drag and drop that. Because the way the pillars interact with the platforms is not the same as the way the platform interacts with other platforms. And that's the only reason why you have to do these ones down here individually. If I have a look, you'll see that they're all individually attached. Yep, this one, if I delete that, it's mainly because of the support from this side. Now, the higher you go, the shorter that support distance is. Yeah, so from down here, I've got the full 5. From up here, I've only got 4, where I start to have issues. If you're worried about this, you can actually just clean that up, because that should be... Yeah, now, see, it's still attaching, because it's just the height. You lose some of that support as you get higher. Because this one doesn't disappear, because it's actually being supported by that pillar over there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And it's the same for the others. So just be careful of that. Once you're on the top floor, it doesn't matter too much. So let's put our next set of furnaces on top. Okay, so that's our multi-story basic building. Yeah. Now, one of the key things you can do here, especially with the fabricators, is that you can instantly replace these with fabricators. So if I have, let's say, let's do the middle. I want fabricators in here for some reason. Let me just place these down again. Don't necessarily need to do that, because now I can put the fabricators directly on. Now I like to put them forward so I have more space at the back. So you can, with this kind of build, you can swap in and out between your fabricators and your furnaces. You can even do that with the smelters if you want. Right. Unfortunately, it's a bit difficult to do that with the rest of these because of the different sizes. You know, this is 4 wide, which does not fit into this, you know, 4x6 pattern structure. These are longer, right? They're 5 units longer, if I recall correctly. Or they're 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're 6 long. That's right, same as a compounder. So they're not going to fit into these little structures. But for a lot of the starter stuff, up until the mega press, you can reconfigure, if you're doing a bus system, reconfigure the bus to suit the mega presses and assemblers as needed. I'll actually show you that in another video where I've created a starter base where you can see that in action. But yeah, that's how it goes. Now, what I'm going to do, I'll quickly do the rest of this, and walkway there just to fill in the gap for now. mainly because there's no support. As I said, as you go higher, you get less support. So because there's no pillars here, I don't get that support. Yeah, it's no real need to worry about that on the back ends, because you're essentially going to be placing your rails directly in front. So this, you're going to probably turn into railways anyway. So if I can actually do that. Now, the reason you wanted to do railways, sorry, walkways, not railways, walkways, is the more of these platforms you have powered, the more build lag you're going to get. Now, you'll notice, this is an important thing, you'll notice that I have not attached this to my powered grids over here. Now, this is how you build without the build lag. You only get the build lag when you're attaching your structures to powered structures. So the fact that I've got no power attached to this, I have no build lag when building this at all. All right, so that's a very important thing you need to remember. Now, if you're building large, multiple structures, you don't want build lag. Just don't have power attached to it. So let me do this side quickly. Now, you want to be careful here, because it seems like you could put rails along here for your bus lines, but you've got to be careful because these are actually the support pillars. Yeah, so if you replace that, depending on the size, like for example, if you're doing compounders, the mega press, or even the assemblers, you might take away the support for the upper floor. So if I delete this, see, that entire building's going to go. So if I go to replace that with a autosave, if I go to replace that with a rail, for example, see how it disappears? Because the rail doesn't actually, none of the rails actually offer support when you're placing it at the instance sense. Like now that it's here, I can actually, the rail does give some support, yeah, but very limited. I can't put a platform over here because there's no support from here. I can put it here because the support comes from this pillar here. But I can't put it here because there's no real support coming from here. Yeah. The support for this one and this one is actually coming from this rail, this pillar and platform here. This does not actually supply support. It supplies a connection for support, but doesn't supply support at all. So you want to make sure that you keep this line here clear of rails. So let's just fix this back up. Alright. Put that furnace back down. So what you want to make sure is to make, see how I've got that down the bottom? That's my first rail line. I need to make sure that I'm doing it for the other levels as well. Now once you finish putting all the rails in and everything's ready to go, you can actually go through here and clean up everything and get rid of the stuff, the platforms you don't need. Because every time you add a platform, it's powered, it adds to the system of powering, which means it needs to be registered in the database, so to speak. So the more of these you have, the more build lag you're going to get for other things. So if you want to minimize that, you just need to get rid of the platforms that are unnecessary. Yeah, so in this case, these platform 2 here are not necessary because there's no pillars. I can leave it blank if I want, or I can put a walkway in. Yeah, same for the rest of these. Even through here, I can get rid of all of these platforms I don't need. I only need the one that's actually attaching the rails. The rest can go if possible, just like I did at the back here. So this is the basic structure. Yeah, you can duplicate on the other side. I generally like to have in sets of 4 wide, So if I was building this for real, I'd probably have another set on the other side and have my 4 wide before I have like a main bus line to go through, because that's enough. You know, in most cases, 4 wide, depending on how much space you've got, gives you, you can probably normally fit in most areas a total of 8 wide. So you have 2 wings and then a main bus down the middle for some reason. I'll show you some more examples of that when I do my starter base video. But for now, this is what it will look like. So next is rails. Now, there's different styles of rails you can use, depending on your preference and so forth. I've done a lot of mines with the multi-rail 5s and the multi-rail 3s for the starter, but I like the multi-rail 5s because what that does give me is the ability to go up and down as well as in and out to a certain extent. Now, as you can see here, I've gone and put them right next to the pillars. I generally don't like to do that because if I need other things on the side, because the pillars, the rails themselves don't offer support, I like to have a walkway. You know? So in most cases, I actually do this too wide, which seems like a waste of space when you get to the top level, because it just feels like there's that extra one where the pillars would normally be. But it makes it much nicer. If you've got the space, it makes it much nicer and easy to navigate. What is that doing? What I think it's doing? Yeah, okay. This one's a little different. But this is much nicer without build lag. Okay, so this one. And like I said, it gives me a nice walkway, as well as if I'm deleting platforms to go up and down. So let's say, for example, let's do this one quickly. Okay, so I put them on the same line as the pillar. Yeah, and now if I delete this, let's do that one down there as well. Right. So what that allows me to do, I usually do an inner line, and since this is the front, if this is the back, I should have done it from the back, but anyway, I can go up and down from here. So I can go down one, yeah, and then down a full one, all the way down here. Now you got to make sure you keep that in line, because you might want to be using all of these. So I've still got 2 free lines here. So what I might do, just get this one done. I can go down here as well. Yeah. So that allows goods to travel down from the front. Now, if this was the back, I would also want to go up. So what I can do here is go up. Oh, crossing somewhere. Yep. This is why you want to make sure that they're all aligned. Oh, and I can go up to this one. And if I wanted to, I can go all the way to the top.
Rupture activity detected. I recommend finding a safe place.
Okay, so we have rupture. I'll be back after the rupture. Okay, the rupture is finished. I went and put a few of these in quickly, just so that they're there if we need them. As I stated before, using the 5-rail system, you can go up and down quite relatively easy. if you have things coming in from the side, you might want to use one of the side rails, but there's ways of doing this. So as you can see, I've done this with the furnaces in between the machines. You really do need 2 spaces between the two, and with the furnaces it's fairly easy to do that, and which is one of the reasons I like to use its footprint, is even for the fabricators, because I still keep that 2 space and I can swap in and out as necessary. Alright, now to go inward, let's have a look here. Let's put these down quickly. I tend to use the T sections, obviously. I go at the back, 1 up, and in the middle, oh sorry, in the front, I tend to go 1 down. But what we'll actually do, because this is also important, because of the height, sometimes you might find, we'll do it from inside here. Now, I normally go 1 down from here, but as you can see, if I go down, it won't do it, because the current platform that's there is blocking it. So what we need to do is delete the platforms in front. Okay, and then we can place it. So 1 down. 1 down. Now what that allows me to do, gives me some more flexibility. Okay, so I can either go directly into the machine. Yeah. Or if it's on an edge, because of the way, let me show you first, actually. So we're going, this way is forward. So what we would do, okay, that way, this one would come out. So there's my ins and outs. Yeah. Now, if I had on the other side a similar setup, these would also go out this way. Yeah, but sometimes I want to be able to, okay, so actually, hang on, go this way, and this one is going this way. Okay, sometimes I may not want these machines to go out. Yeah, I want them to go straight back into the main line over here. So what I might do, instead of having this one go directly into the machine, I might do that instead. Yeah, so that allows anything coming from these machines, depending on what's feeding and what, to either go directly into the machine, yeah, or if I need it to go back into the main bus line over here, I do this, so I can either go into the machine or out to the main bus line. Now, one of the things to remember when you do this, alright, you create a crossing point between 2 lines. And when you do that, every time they collide, they slow down. Yeah, whereas this, because it's direct, there's no slowing, yeah, which helps reduce congestion on the lines. Okay. And then I can do this to keep going. Yeah, now that I've done that, I could go up, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I keep the space between the machines, my ups and downs, and the spaces here, and particularly, let's say I want to bring something into the line. So, as an example, let's lock that in. Maybe I want to bring something into the line. So I could do that. Or maybe I want to bring something out of the line. It allows a flexibility and getting things in from the sides if you want to. Yeah. And perhaps eventually, once they fix the 5-way in the version 5s and the version 3s, it'll allow you to actually utilize these rails a bit more. Yeah. So there's less of a congestion, because at this current moment, that's still a single line, and this is a single line transfer unit. So anything coming out here will slow down other items going along the line. same with all these. Every time it comes to a crossing point, there's a bit of congestion if there's multiple items coming along those lines. So when we do the next level, actually, I'm going to do this first, just to show you. Sometimes this is an issue, sometimes it's not. Depends on the machine. But generally speaking, I try to avoid this. So let's get down one. Down one. Now if I have that and I go down here and try to do the same, let's put these ones in. Oop. One up. Where are you? There you are. One up. Alright, so as you can see from the rails, right, when you do this, the underside does pop through. That can cause issues. And this one it won't so much because I'm using the furnace as my height regulator as such. Because they're so tall, they don't actually interfere with each other. There's space. And what I mean by that is when I do this, it doesn't interfere. Now, if this was, say, fabricator height or any of the other, 3 offset height systems, that would pose an issue because of that height. When I use the furnaces, it gives me this gap for these to pass through. When you're using things like the height of the fabricator, the smelter, all those sorts of offset 3 machines, this will actually drop down and interfere with this line here. So you would have to actually delete this, place the line first, and then do it. So if I show you now, let me just drop this one down a little bit lower. So let's go down 2 more, because that would be the normal height if you're just using the fabricator or smelter or any of the others. See how it goes through? Now, because I've placed this already, it's not an issue. This will not block any items traveling through because it's already been placed, this line. But if I go to place it after the fact, it's blocked. Okay, so if you decide that you don't need furnaces and you're building to the height of a fabricator or something else similar, be wary of that. You want to build down, up. But if you're building to the height of furnaces, it's not an issue because you do have that gap. Don't have that problem. Okay, so keep that in mind. As I said, I prefer to build everything furnace height because I don't have to keep trying to remember particularly the heights of my pillars, support pillars. This works with everything as far as height's concerned. So I generally don't worry about it, unless I'm building, maybe for example, I'm building a fabricator only outpost. I might just keep it low, but if you want to keep it simple, build everything furnace height, and then that's your standard. Unless there's an issue with ground height levels and so forth, you might want to reduce it or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I try to keep everything the same based on the furnace height. Keep things simple. Alright, so we do that. This comes out to the line here. And this comes out to goes in. And then we obviously have our connector here, and so forth. And then again here, I could do the up and down section. Now, this is the other reason why I like to have that walkway in the middle, because deleting these, I lose support, potentially, depending on what else I'm doing. This way, I've always got this one line down the middle that has support, plus I have somewhere to walk on the multi-levels. Because building a walkway out here on the outside of it does become an issue, or can become an issue. So I can do exactly the same here. I do my straight through line, and then I go one up, one up, and then put it in so I don't forget it. Oh, I got this line wrong. Hang on. That's the other thing that these can do. They can actually go multi-directions. I haven't actually tested that with one unit on the line yet, but I'll wait till they fix it before I start messing around with that. Okay, and then I can go all the way to the top, and then down. Just have to make sure. One down, and then if I want to, one all the way down. So that's basically my 5-rail systems for going up and down. I only do this generally on the outside. Like if I build this, as I usually do, one wing 4 wide, one section 4 wide. So I basically duplicate this on this side. I would not do that down here. Generally speaking, I would, depending on how much space I have to play with, okay, I would have, you could have 2 lines, yeah, for just straight throughs, just as an example. And then I would start my next line. That's very, very tight, to say the least. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, and I would start my next line on this side. I would use those here all the way up. But I found that if I have the space, what I do prefer, and it gives me more flexibility, and I don't have to rebuild and, you know, pull things down and rebuild. If I have the space, I actually like to have this 4 wide, if possible. So I would in fact have it 4 wide. 1, 2, 3. So what I could do then, for example, is something like this. And if I wanted to do ups and downs from this side as well, I could place these here. And then have my crosses sections in here. Now, obviously, if I was going to do something similar to this, what I would probably do on the inner line, I would most likely change heights. Now, generally speaking, you need a change of 2 height, just like we did with these here. You need that difference of height of 2 units to make things cross nicely. So if I was doing something like this, I would actually probably raise these by 1 and these go down by 1. Yeah, so it would be more along the lines of this. Up one, up one, and then these would drop this side. These ones in the middle would drop one. But I don't necessarily do this a lot in this regard. Yeah, I don't use these here very often. In my starter base video, I will be going through this sort of configuration a bit more. Oh, that didn't go right. These actually want to go down one. It all depends on your preference. I generally don't like using these here like this. What I would generally do is something more akin to this. Okay. Yeah, and then if I wanted to use an internal up and down, I would use this here. I can actually stay the same height now. Which then I could use to go up. A bit easier. Now see, there's the issue. Because I don't have that walkway, they disappeared. Because there's no support, direct support. That can pose a problem. It won't be an issue, generally speaking, because you will have, if you're doing this middle section, you will have a whole system of connected points on the other side. I'll just do this quickly, just so we can see it properly. So I've got my throughput. Actually, we're going this way. Sorry, OCD's kicking in. I won't do it because that's there. Connecting line, and then I can go up. Yeah, or I could go down. Okay, so you could do something like that on the center line. It just depends on how you're going. Often I use the ones closest to the line to be my main bus forward. Oops. And that center part. Alright, this part here would be my return line if I needed to go back for some reason. Yeah, and I could do things with the different heights to cross, so it doesn't interfere with one line going back, or yeah, it just depends. Alright, so there's different configurations of this that you can do. I'll probably do some more of that with my starter video, because there's a lot of things I've done there. But yeah, there's a lot of options you can do with this. Okay, so that's basically it for the 3D building. As I said, I like to keep everything the furnace height, which means all of these will be the same height. The only one that's not, if I do purely compounders, is this one, is this here, needs to be a different height. You can do it. I've had done it out here. It's flat enough for me to do it out here. I'm not going to do it now. Just take my word for it. But generally speaking, what I like to do, just as an example, is two assemblers, layers of assemblers. Okay. And because it's lower, I don't need to go down. Alright, so assemblers. Because they're but they are longer. But this is just an example. I used to do that with the assemblers, and then on top, I generally put one compounder. Okay, I have visitors. It's not going to necessarily work too well because I have this gap, but I'm going to steal one of the front ones. Yeah, and that's what I would do. Make sure it's lined up. And I would have the compounder on top. Yeah. Because the compounder builds raw stuff by itself. Or sometimes it needs things to go into the assemblers. So I would use a back channel to come back in. Yeah. And friends coming. What's out here? Disrupting me? Nope. Right. So, that's the basic construction. Yeah, for this I would probably build support pillars at the back here just to give that extra support for the compounder at the front. But that keeps everything on the same height level with this. The only other complication obviously is the mega press. But normally, once I've done the furnace fabricators as a block, I will put down the silos to store all the things that these will make. So you can use type 3 silos. I find because of the size, I like to use the 2s, the smaller ones, so I can fit more in. So being able to put the smaller ones in allows me to have more of these, as well as to make it a bit more condensed, because I'm doing a 3D build, multi-floor build. I can put them on multiple floors. Okay, so we've got this one won't fit because I don't have the support. If I put a pillar here, it would have the support. Excuse me. And again, on top of it, I don't have the support pillar here, so I can't put it on top. Let's do the support pillar quickly. Won't take that long. So 1, 2, 3. Should have done the Z. Up we go. That seems off. Oh, I did the 3 from the base, not the actual land ground level. Let's just go from here, shall we? Yeah, lock. Lock. It doesn't like that for some reason. Not sure, but this doesn't matter too much. And put these up. Actually, that's false. To put them here. Sometimes it bugs out like this. This should work fine. There's plenty of pillar support. Let's see if it'll let me put it anyway. That should work. I'm gonna have to. I would probably have to clean up the pillars and redo this again to make that work, but that should work. Yeah. But either way, it still gives me, even if it doesn't work, it still gives me 8 storage per level on this one wing. And if I double it up, that's another 16 storage for 2 wings, or 1 wing of 4. My OCD's being triggered by that gap. Let me just, there we go. I jumped a little bit ahead here just to give you an idea. I prefer the small ones in this instance because I can build multiple levels of them, which will better control the flow of what is being produced by my furnaces and fabricators before I move on to the mega presses. This gives me a bit of separation. I can either bypass these to go directly in the mega presses, but for me personally, I would use these as a breakpoint, so nothing that these produce can go directly into the mega presses. Kind of gives me a little bit of a control mechanism to control the flow better. And this is just one wing or one set. Normally I would have 3 more of these sets, so 3 more wide. Like I said, I'd probably have 2 and then a main return channel, which I can control a controlled loop as such. So I can go things that need to go back, like for example, sometimes you need let me see, what do we need? We need chemicals, for example, to go back to make magnets. We need ceramics and powders to make let me see, what else? I have a top of my head, I can't remember. I know what it's called. Right, hardening requires synthetic silicon. Depending how deep you go, you might find that your synthetic silicon is on the same row as your hardening agent, so you might need to go back in a limited loop. Same with the inductors required for, the chemicals for the supermagnets. Electronics also with the inductors and the synthetic agents. So depending on how deep you go with your furnaces, you might need to have a controlled loop to go backwards one row to get to those. Now, if you have enough depth, you might not need to, but just keep in mind that that might be required, which is why you want a fairly wide channel in the middle for your return loops. I don't do it on the sides. The sides are purely forward buses. And in the to flying, and my center channel, I would have forward buses as well to help break it up some more, and a return channel. No? So once you've finished building everything, cleaning out all the unused needed platforms, as I said, you don't need the platforms in the middle here. Yeah, you can put walkways instead. If I can remember where the walkways were. Once you've done all that, obviously you're going to need stairs or some way to traverse up and down. So to traverse up and down, you're going to need something there. I prefer stairs mostly. With some platforms sometimes it just takes time, practice to work out the stairs, how to use them efficiently. But yeah, bus line, return line in the middle. Again, too wide. Once you've finished cleaning up all the platforms, putting your walkways in, then I would recommend, then is when you connect the power. Done. All without build lag. Yep. If you find you still need to do something, just reattach power. Unattach the power, and off you go and keep going again. Yep. Like I said, I like to build in sections. This allows me to cut the power on and off between sections, and then build what I need to build and reattach the power depending on how bad the build lag is for you. That's what I would recommend. So that's it. Questions, comments, feel free to leave them. Happy to answer any questions. If you need help with something or don't understand something clearly, I'm quite happy to try and help you with that. I do have a starter outpost video coming out shortly once it's finished. So please feel free to subscribe, like, all that jazz. And yeah, have a nice day. Ciao.